Hello! Today we're going to take a look at how to leverage ClojureScript's compiler warnings to improve developer experience of your library, for example, or inside of your project. That's something that I do a lot for UIX to guide users and help them to understand if they're doing something wrong or improve their code. So we'll start with an example of data DSL for SQL. So for example, we'll have the following syntax. We'll say select field from users where is going to be a vector of ID equals 1, for example, right? So in order to turn this data DSL into the output, which is going to be an SQL string, we need to parse and validate the data structure and then compile it. A good way to parse data is to use ClojureSpec. So I will require ClojureSpec, and then we can go with defining SQL query spec, which is going to be a set of keys, and we will have SQL select statement, SQL from statement, and SQL where statement, right? For SQL select, we'll just say that it has to be a keyword, the same for from, and for where, it has to be a sequence of field, which is also a keyword, of operation, which also has to be a keyword, and then for a value, we'll go just with a number. Right, so this is a really simple spec for a query, and then we can, let's put it into a var and check if our query satisfies the spec. SQL query, and then we can pass a query here. Okay, right, true, so it is valid. And now if we change operation from keyword to symbol, we'll see that it's not valid. Okay, so now to my users, to my ClojureScript users, I want to provide a macro called SQL that will take query and turn the query into a string at compile time, right? So we're not going to do the whole compilation, but just for parsing, as an example, we can do conform here. So this will return kind of parsed data structure, and then we can do some transformations and return compiled string, right? But before that, before parsing, we need to check if the query is valid, and if it's not valid, we can say invalid SQL query, right? Okay. So now if I run the query on in ClojureScript, but for that I need to require macros, the namespace itself, and refer to SQL. Okay, SQL require macro. Oh, sorry, I did it wrong. It should be CLJS here. Right, okay. So we're gonna see a red screen from Shadow CLJS that prints an assertion error. Because we have an assert here, we'll see that compilation failed, encountered error when macro expanding SQL assertion failed the message, and then there's a long stack trace of internals of the compiler up to a point where we run the SQL macro. Okay, this is in a kind of okay way, but we are kind of breaking the compiler. We're just unresponsibly throwing an exception, which is not great. So, and like, it's not always that you wanna, prevent users from doing something. Maybe you just want to print a warning instead of an exception, and like tell them that, hey, what you are doing is fine, but you can do it like this way. Or maybe this is just a warning. You want to put a warning that's just guiding users, and it doesn't have to be an error, right? So what you could do is instead target ClojureScript analyzer and add a warning. Let's call it SQL invalid query. Let's see what other parameters. Environment. So we can put an environment, no extra data. So we can say, I will comment this out, when the spec is not valid, then we will tell the compiler that we want to warn a user. right? And the analyzer, yeah, I don't need analyzer in ClojureScript, so I will just put it as a part of CLJ, okay? Right, so this way we're gonna tell the compiler that, hey, we have a warning here, and then to render the actual warning, we will define a method for analyzer error message method, and we'll say that this is going to be a method for SQL invalid query. This takes warning type and some info, and then here we can return the string that will represent the error, right? Okay, so let's try this. So now you can see that instead of an error, we have a warning, nicely formatted warning. And we can, of course, leverage some of the environment information to maybe like put the arrow into the position of where the actual error in the syntax is happening. So we can do that, but like as a simple example, that's how you can do warnings. And also you can use compiler options in your build config to enable or disable this particular warning using like the keyword, the name of the warning, which is also nice because you might not need some warnings, right? So yeah, this is it. If you're building something which is a macro and it's going to be used in ClojureScript, that's how you can leverage ClojureScript Analyzer to report, to collect and report warnings.